I'm focused on his spirit cause it keeps me from his fire. The Holy Ghost was with me, so my fear I leave behind. My sins were all diminished when he took that breath and died. And if you think I'ma give up on my God, the devil is a lie. The devil is a lie. The devil is a lie.
Hello, this is Christina Barton watching Black Tea News. Hello. Welcome to Black Tea News. I'm your host, Christina Barr, and today we're going to be talking about this meme that I saw earlier on on TikTok, which stirred some memories. If you recall, there was a picture back in the day when Trump was president before of incoming interns at the White House. And so people compared that photo with Trump with Obama's interns, and there were a lot more brown faces under the Obama administration. So I saw at the top it said DEI with DEI and without DEI. So I have some thoughts because the implication is that this is a good thing when you have the DEI, this is what it gets you, and so on. And so I have a lot of experience dealing with Democrats and how they actually feel about diversity. So I just need to share some feelings and some thoughts and some feelings with you guys about that topic. Also, I did watch the entirety of the Trump interview with Kristen Welker, and I thought it was very interesting. I thought, some of her questions were fine. I guess most were probably fine. I thought that some of them were kind of a waste of time. He wasn't like super aggressive with her or anything like that, but he accused her of being biased at times and of it being a nasty interview. And I don't know, I don't think nasty is the right word, but I did think some of the questions were like, ma'am, like, get over it. So anyway, that's what we'll be talking about. I see you in the chat. Ashteen85, and those of you who are coming in, thank you to those of you who are watching live, and to those of you who will watch the program back later, thank you for viewing. Before we jump at everything, I want to encourage you guys to go to blackteennews.com, check out different content on my website. I see Kit Kat in the chat. Hello, Kit Kat. Go to the website, check out different content on the website, articles, videos, etc. If you like what I do, please consider leaving a donation at blackteennews.com/donate, because it does cost a stream, run my site, all the good stuff you guys can support. I very much appreciate you guys. If you guys also want to support via getting, different merch, you guys can do that as well. You guys can check out some of my books on Amazon, like, of course, God is Blood, Ink is Abortion. I do have that available. I have a second edition available now. I do also have different t-shirts and stuff at blackteennews.com. You guys can check out mugs and so on, and t-shirts. So go ahead, check out the stuff. That's another way to support as well. If you're watching on Facebook, you guys can send stars. Watching on YouTube, you guys can do super chats. And I don't think I have any announcements. I do apologize for starting a little late today, but let's hop to it. So we'll get to the Kristen Welker interview, but first, this is on my mind. I just recorded TikTok about it. I didn't get a chance to post it, so I thought I might have a little more time to go into more depth if I explained it to you guys live. So let's just flash back a little bit. So in Trump's administration, I remember when this photo came out of these interns and how people were complaining about how white it was. Speaking of white, I think it's so funny how upset people get when they see a bunch of white people. Like, you can question, like, I don't know, sometimes, like, where's like the diversity or whatever in your mind, I guess, but as if there's something inherently bad about there just being a sea of white people. That's what people feel like during the 2016 campaign, maybe it was till 2015 at the time. Um, I don't know. I can't remember, but maybe when was Mike Pence announced that I guess it had to have been 2016 by then. But I was asked to sing the national anthem at a rally in Novi. It was at I think it was at the Suburban Show place. And I sang, my dad gave an opening prayer, my family came to support and stuff. They were late though, so I think they missed my national anthem. And maybe they were late and missed it. And I don't think anyone recorded it. So that sucked. But I went ahead and I sang, and my dad gave the opening prayer and stuff, and so on. But anyway, at the end of the night, they were interviewing people. I guess that media was interviewing people all throughout the night, but they interviewed one of my sisters, Sabrina, who's been like a Trumper like the whole time. And she's looking forward to going to the inauguration and hopefully getting into the ball. Hopefully everything works out. But she couldn't go before because of work, and so she's like, I'm getting into that ball. So we'll see. You know. So she was interviewed, and other people were interviewed. So when I looked up the news report, oh, okay. My sister Katrina said she was there, but she did not record me. But maybe she seemed like people came in like in shifts, or I don't know if people came in shifts or whatever, but well, I guess I was there earlier, so maybe other people were earlier there with me. But anyway, there just was no recording of it, if anyone asks. But when I watched the news report later that had my sister on it, it was so funny to me. And I can maybe go back and still find this. I think I put on a TikTok once, but they were talking about how it was still a lot of white people there, but the crowds were evolving. But the reporter said that the room was overwhelmingly white. And they said it in that reporter voice. And it's so funny that all these reporters just kind of have the same kind of demeanor. And I don't know why exactly it evolved into that sort of demeanor. I was thinking about it when I was listening to Kirsten Wilker doing her interview. I'm like, why do they all like talk the same basically? Like it's just funny. But I just got a kick out of them saying the room was overwhelmingly white. Like why are you so overwhelmed by white people? What was what was your feel? Is that your feeling when you walk into a room and you're just like, oh, I'm so overwhelmed by all of this. It's just sparkling and bright and like a whiteout, you know? What goes in your mind when you're in the editing room? Now, maybe you don't generally think that when you walk into a room and there's just a bunch of white people. Maybe that's just how they wanted to frame it, to just make it seem like nobody black supports Trump or nobody Hispanic. And they said that there was some diversity in the room, but they wanted to make it known that it was overwhelmingly white. And I think that just helps to build on the narrative that they wanted to build regarding Trump with he's a bad person. He doesn't like black people. He's a racist, and you're a racist if you support him. And if you're a minority and you support him, then you're a traitor or something like that. Maybe it's all part of the plan. I don't know. I just thought it was strange. Now, anyway, when this picture came out way back in the day, when Trump was president, I remember the controversy that it seemed to form. And so this is the same photo that I saw on TikTok earlier today. But it was it had words on it. So the top said, this is with DEI and this is without DEI. Now, the top photo is Obama administration with his interns, and the bottom one was Donald Trump's. And so people were, I don't know, concerned with how overwhelmingly white it was, I guess. And people were flipping out about it. And I remember different commentary about it at the time, and I didn't really think it was a big deal. And it's not a big deal for a couple reasons. The most obvious one is that it wasn't quite so fashionable back then to be a black Trump supporter or Hispanic Trump supporter. I mean, you've seen a big improvement as far as his minority numbers, Black women have basically still retained the pro-Democrat. They didn't really move much, but he improved a lot of areas, especially with Hispanics who are just shifting away from Democrats anyway because they're too insane. They're not good on, immigration and people who come in the right way. They want other people to not skip the line. They find that to be pretty offensive. They don't want things that they ran away from and escaped from to start festering up in the country that they want to build a life in. A lot of Hispanic people are very religious, and they see a lot of the things that Democrats are supporting as evil, and very just, and then there's a hostility there toward their particular beliefs. So they've shifted. I don't know why it's taking the Black community so long to shift over, because it's not like Republicans have done some kind of special outreach to Latinos. They haven't. But maybe, I don't know, maybe just maybe the pressure, the internal pressure within the Black community has something to do with it, and the culture and so on. I'm sure it probably does, but it's just fascinating because you see this shift with the Hispanic community, from the Democrats to Republicans, but it's not due to some kind of massive, amazing strategy from the Republican side. And I wouldn't even say, like, people like, oh, it's just because of Trump. No, it's not. I mean, they're shifting in that direction anyway, and they also are going out voting for other Republicans beyond Trump anyway. So it's just a shift that's happening, and hopefully, it continues, and hopefully other, minorities will eventually jump on that train too. But back then, 2016, 2017, and so on, it just wasn't as cool, wasn't fashionable. There was a lot more the people had to lose. There was the silent Trump voter, and a lot of people were really silent. And if you were a silent Trump voter, why the heck would you apply to be an intern? So there was probably a much smaller pool of applicants of people of color anyway. So there are some minorities in that bottom picture with the Trump administration for their interns. There's a handful, and some people are just like, because I don't know, you might not be able to tell anyway, but because sometimes you go to rallies and you see a sea of people, and most of it kind of does look white, and I guess most of it is white faces. But if you get closer, like, okay, well, that person is actually really light, and that person is that, and that person's that. Oh, that person's mixed. You just kind of have to be up close and kind of talk to folks anyway. But it's a smaller pool. So Obama's administration probably had a lot more minorities to pick through to put in their administration, to put in their interns, rather than Trump. I would put money on that being a factor, right? Then there's just the case, if people say that Obama's group has all these folks because of DEI, and Trump's people have it because they don't have DEI. I think that's really demeaning and diminishing toward the applicants in the Obama era. If you're saying, I'm not saying they're not talented, I'm not saying they didn't have a good resume, but they were picked because they're brown, they were put above other people who were not. There were people who were not considered because they didn't have the right skin color. And so maybe they were even, and then they just got the extra bunch, the extra points or whatever, and that got them in the White House. Or maybe they were a little below, but like, oh, but they're Indian, so that got them above. I don't know exactly how it worked. I don't know if that's the case at all. That's just what people on TikTok are now, at least right now, saying as they try to defend DEI. But that's not good. If you got a position, don't you want to know that you earned that position, instead of someone coming up to you and say, hey, you're here because you're Black. I just want you to know, you're here because you're Black. Because people will claim that they like DEI and they want to support DEI. We should have DEI. But when you say something like, hey, Kamala Harris is a DEI candidate, they get so angry. They're so offended because they do find something demeaning in that. So they want the points, but then they don't want the revelation of the truth. So, if you want to just to be based on merit and people to know you by the merits of what you bring to the table rather than things that you couldn't help anyway with your genetics and your ethnicity and how much melanin you have in your skin, then we should want that to not be a factor. So I think even assuming that they're there because of DEI is just really demeaning to all those candidates on the top. Now, it could be the case that the couple of people who are there on the bottom who are minorities are there because they're like, okay, we need to make sure that we do have some people of color. Like, this is a lot of white applicants, so let's go and see if we got some black people in here and make sure that if there are, then they're going to get in. But we don't know if that's the case. It's just speculation, and I'm just throwing out that possibility. But it's strange to me, and again, this particular picture doesn't have that, but I'm going off of what people were saying on TikTok earlier. They were saying that the top was DEI, and they're saying the bottom is without DEI. So they're making that assertion that those people of color are there because they're people of color, and the people of color who are there at the bottom are there because they were there based on merit and they happen to be people of color. Now, I've been people have pointed out in certain circumstances that I am black. There was one person who I was having a conversation with, and they were just talking about how talented I am, how smart I am, and so on. And they're like, "Oh, you're so kind, and you're smart, and you're just so talented with your different projects and the art and different things that you can do." And she just was going down a list, and then she ended with, "You're black." And sweet person. I laugh about it a lot. But I'm just like, I guess I didn't get offended or whatever, because I'm just like, because all the other things that she said were true. Okay. I know I bring a lot of other things to the table, and I happen to, yes, be black. Okay. You noticed. But I'm still smart. I still like to read and research, and I did well in school, and I worked very hard on my own to craft a lot of my abilities as far as writing and art and other things. And I'm very proud of my accomplishments, and other people have recognized them. And at the end of the day, I still have brown skin, I guess. But what's important to me is who I am, you know whether it's a child of God, whether it's a child of my parents, you so a hard worker, you know, someone who's really not just born with talent, but someone who works at my talents and my gifts that God has, given to me, as Rush Limbaugh would say, talent on loan from God. Those things are important to me, the people in my life, the people I choose to have in my life, and so on, and yeah, I happen to be black. And it's not, that I don't like or appreciate that either. I mean, I find my family history to be pretty fascinating, and it's kind of cool being in this background of underdogs, this underdog story of America. But at the end of the day, my ancestors, though they were treated poorly, they still were optimistic about where they lived, and they knew that God was still the Lord of their lives, and that they were going to work hard. And at the end of the day, God is the one who has the final say. So you know um I just got an interesting background, a lot going for me, I guess. But what's really fascinating to me about this photo and the assertion about the DEI, and the DEI being a good thing and it's a bad thing that there's all these white people at the bottom, it does show you how racist that kind of a thought process is. Because if you just see a bunch of white people, there's just something in the mind that goes, something bad is happening. Something bad is happening when you just see a bunch of white people there, and there's not other ethnicities or so on going on. It kind of reminds me, and some people used to ask or think, like, why does she talk so much about like TV shows and movies and diversity hiring and casting and stuff? Because there's an ideology behind it. And one of the biggest examples, or best examples I could think of, was when Marvel casted a Hispanic guy to play Namor. Namor, his dad is Caucasian, his mom is an Atlantean. He used to get teased for having pink skin, and he's not supposed to be Hispanic, and they made him like Aztec or something like that in the background. And Namor is an obscure character to a lot of people. I used to have a Michael Turner, a beautiful Michael Turner. He was an amazing artist. He passed away years ago, but poster, Submariner poster on my wall. I think it was like a Submariner #1, not like way back in the day, but I guess it was years ago now. But there's a series that they did, and it was, I think, the cover #1, and it was wonderful. I liked the character Namor, and so when they casted him, I didn't like it at all for the Wakanda whatever. I mean, not Wakanda whatever, Wakanda forever. And I was complaining about it, and so people were lashing out at me and telling me that I needed to be happy because a brown person was playing Namor. And I just thought that was so strange, because I'm like, we're not even the same kind of brown. So why would it be especially like good for me, or make me happy? I'm not we don't have the same genetic makeup or whatever. It's not like a win in the black column or something. And but people are upset at me because I'm like, this person is supposed to be white. I would just prefer if he looked more like how the character's supposed to be. But it's even more odd to me when people are pushing back and they're mad at me because I'm not happy that this person isn't white. So to me, it's not that these people are so happy that there's diversity. It seems that they're more just happy that they're not white. I think diversity is good. I think inclusion is good. But I think it's the ideology of the sandwiches it with the equity that causes a lot of problems. Like I made my Super Kid book, right? I wanted it to be diverse. I wanted the characters to be diverse. The main character, Felix, he's half Mexican, and his dad is Caucasian. And then I have Lee is Chinese, and Kiara is black. And so I wanted to be diverse, and people pick up the book and they're like, oh, I like the diversity and stuff. It was, when I first made Felix, I was looking up different names, and they said Felix was pretty common. And I'm like, I don't know how many Felixes. I'm like, I really like that name. And so just, I, through that kind of design, I ended up wanting to make him, have Mexican and stuff. And I always knew Princess Lady Diva was going to be black. and I'm like, okay, well, let me, make it even more diverse. So that was design. And that's fine when people want to do things like that. Like, people always say, like, oh, stop, changing characters, create more. There's nothing wrong with wanting people to be included. There's nothing wrong with people wanting to see more diversity. But I think there's something heinous when there's this ideology of, we want this person to not be white. There's just an anti-whiteness that I don't like. I can't get with. So if you see a picture and you see a bunch of white people and you just automatically think that there's something wrong going on, I don't think that's a good thing. I don't think that's a good thing. Also, people are diverse beyond their skin color. If you look at JD Vance and Donald Trump, you could say, well, those are two white guys. They doubled down on the white guy ticket. And sure, they are both white guys, okay? But when you look at their backgrounds, their backgrounds couldn't be like further apart. Where Donald Trump, he had a modest loan of $1 million, as he likes to say, when he started, doing his business and stuff. A modest loan of $1 million. JD Vance, he came from a background of needing to be raised by his Meemaw. He was his grandma, that he had a troubled past, drug addicted mother, and he had to really get out from his environment to go and make something of himself, and he was able to do that. And so it was so strange to me how Democrats really attacked him for being some kind of Ivy League guy, and and having a good education. And this guy is an American success story, which was being praised before the election and stuff, because he came out with his book and they came out with a movie about it. And I remember when all that stuff was kind of popping up and folks were talking about it. It was big news. But with him being the vice president, they just had to attack him, but they attacked him over the dumbest, silliest things. Because I mean, this is a good thing. This is a great American success story with JD Vance, and Donald Trump obviously has his own American success stories with building his brand and the success of the Trump business and the TV shows and the real estate, and his lifestyle and winning the presidency and coming back and winning a non-consecutive term. It's all incredible, the accomplishments that they both have, but they both have very different upbringings and backgrounds and so on, and if you just look at them and you're like, those are two white guys, and just toss it away, and you're like, it's overwhelmingly white, I think you're going to miss a lot. So you don't know the backgrounds of all these kids. You don't know their life stories, their upbringing, their thought processes, which you would assume ideologically, as far as politics, they're very similar in a lot of regard. But that doesn't mean there's not a lot of diversity in other kinds of ways, economically and academically and so on. So sometimes people get caught up in all the wrong things. But let me get to my real big issue when people look at a room full of Republicans and they're upset because they don't see enough brown faces, in their opinion, which I don't really think that's the case too much anymore, because you see more minorities joining the Republican Party and supporting Trump all the time. You all know, if you've been following me for a minute, that on election night, I was at a party with my sisters. We were at the Michigan party in a suburban showplace. It was a Michigan GOP, Team Trump, and Mike Rogers, all, their teams or whatever, were all together. And so I was there till 4 a.m., and stuff, because I wanted to see Kamala come out and address the people. Like, I want to be there to the end, but of course she didn't do it that night. But when it was announced that he won, which I knew he would won sooner. I don't know what it was about the stations. They were just running behind, versus like Decision Desk was like on it. That's who I was just really kind of following. So I was like, wait, Fox News. But when Fox News like officially announced it, I did a video with two of my sisters, my two older sisters, and I said, Fox just announced Donald Trump won the presidency. And I pointed my sister Gina and I said, this is my sister. She worked for the campaign. And I said, it's her fault. Ha. And so, that was the most braggadocious thing that I had made. And I don't usually make things quite that braggadocious, but hey, caught up in the moment. Right? And so that video right now has like 350,000 views, I think. And it was really hot, like, of course, like right after the election, the election day and day after and so on. But recently, like in the past few days, I would say, I think maybe just even past few days, or if not the past week, it got about another 50,000 or so views. And a lot of those views are coming from users who, I don't know, let's call it Black TikTok. I don't know. I don't know if someone retweeted it. I don't know if it's being shared somewhere. Maybe it's on a Reddit page. Maybe I would know if it was in the shade room. One of my sisters would have told me. I don't know. But I don't know, maybe it was some kind of black bot farm. I don't know. But the comments that are being left on it now are pretty insane. Now I had negative comments before. Most of them were very nice from folks. People were like, oh, tell her I said thank you. She's everybody's sister now. I'm so happy. Your laugh is so infectious and stuff like that. But now there's comments like, Trump is giving full immunity to the police. I hope Tell Trump. I hope Trump tells the police to unalive you and your sisters. Um, I was told today to unblack myself. Not sure how you do that. Been called Sambo, Uncle Tom, which aren't new insults or whatever. I don't know why you would call someone Uncle Tom as an insult, other than the fact that you are unaware of the book, of the character, of the people that it's based off of in real life, and the historical significance of the book and how it led to people being freed from slavery. Maybe they're ignorant of all that, because I certainly would not diminish the legacy of Uncle Tom's Cabin by using it as any kind of negative, connotation toward anyone. So several people have said, this is why Harriet Tubman left some people behind. And I'm like, Harriet Tubman was a Republican who was rescuing Black people from Democrats, but okay. Just lots of comments. You're shucking and jiving from Massa, tap dancing from Massa. Have they picked you? Just a lot of comments like that, and it is what it is. There's a lot of comments about my gap. Oh my gosh, in everybody's gaps in the video. So many comments about my teeth, and I guess I'm really grateful for my gap, because it really distracts people from how absurdly fat I am. So, but I every time someone leaves a comment, I'm just a little baffled, because I've talked about this before. I'm like, I don't dislike my gap. If I did get braces and they're like, it's gonna take away your gap, I'd be like, I don't want to do that. I like it. I like that I inherited from a loving and present father, and I see myself in those that I love. It's a just a trait. It's a genetic trait, and I don't dislike it. And it's also known as a beauty mark as well. And like, I'm told, African culture, at least that's the legend that's told and spread around the Black community, or some of the Black communities. Some people miss the memo, I guess. So I don't care when people say that to me. But it's just, but there's so many negative comments from people in the past week or so. So I brought it up not to really complain, but to educate and to inform you guys that and this isn't new information, but a lot of Democrats are very upset when minorities don't vote the way that they think that they ought to vote. So just like Democrats of the past, people will say that there's a party switch or whatever if you bring up slavery and all kinds of different stuff. I'm like, okay, but you guys are obviously not doing the same thing, but to some degree, you think that you still own Black people. You think that you're entitled to our agency. You think that you are entitled to our agency. And if someone acts a way that you don't deem to be appropriate, and we're just talking about voting, there's realistically, there's two options. I mean, there's more options. You can choose not to vote. You can choose to vote third party. You can choose to vote for someone who's not even on the ballot. You can write someone's name, and you can write your own name in. It's not official unless they're like registered or whatever, but you can do whatever you want. But realistically, either two people are going to be the president of the United States. And you guys know, and the funny thing about all this is I'm getting all this hate, and you guys know that I've had a ton of criticism for Donald Trump, but at the end of the day, Kamala Harris was a terrible candidate. It was a terrible candidate who was apparently running behind the entire time, and her staff knew that. So I'm really baffled why she wasn't ready to come out and concede on election night if they knew that she was always behind. So it's just very bizarre how angry they get, and the amount of crazy comments that I saw and commentary that I saw, not just on TikTok, not just on X, not just on Facebook, but like in mainstream media with different commentators saying the most backward stuff about minorities, just because they were so stunned about Hispanics, people basically wanting them to be deported. And comments like, I hope y'all get what y'all deserve, And a lot of these things that they think are going to happen are just absurd, but they're still wishing ill will towards different folks, and it's just very telling, very telling. And this wasn't even new to Trump. I mean, when during the midterms, when there were high Hispanic numbers who voted, like for Ron DeSantis in Florida, for example, you had Nicole Hannah Jones, who did the 1619 project and stuff. She was trying to, talk about how it's like, oh, let me explain how Cubans aren't really, Hispanic, and she's just trying to exclude different people so she could really count them as white, and so on, and because they didn't like the result and how different groups were voting. And it's just fascinating. When you don't vote the way that they want you to, you have to unblack yourself. But what's interesting is that all these people throwing shade, sometimes it's not just shade, it's like the whole darn tree. They don't at least stop and ask the question of, why did you vote the way that you voted? Because I can answer that question. And I've answered that question. I've got at least a 50 reasons video that I made, and I could have definitely put more on that list. And I've done breakdowns on why, as a Christian, I feel other Christians should vote against Kamala Harris for very specific, reasons, as far as your religious liberty and so on. Because most people in the past will just be like abortion or whatever, but Donald Trump's, he's better than her, but still not where I obviously want him to be. And but there are other issues at hand, and I pointed that out. So I could list all kinds of reasons why I didn't vote for her and why I really wanted her to lose. You guys know that she's my least favorite Democrat in 2020 who ran, my least favorite one, and that's the one who they put up to run for president. So they don't care. They're just mad that I did what I did. Now, there's some people I've seen online who tried to reach out and want an explanation. Now, some people who say, hey, can you guys explain why you voted the way that you voted? I think some people ask for clickbait to have engagements in their comments that aren't hateful, whatever, but there's respectful comments, and then other people come and they watch and they say stuff and they stitch and they bring more eyes, and that accumulates more money. So I think maybe some people are doing it not because they genuinely want to understand, but I think there's plenty of people who are shocked and they're trying to understand. They're trying to understand where people are coming from, and I hope a lot of people can grow and start to see the other side. But a lot of people don't. They don't care. They don't care. They just want to believe that you're some kind of traitor and so on. So again, I'm pointing this out because Democrats will say that they care about diversity, but they don't. They definitely don't care about diverse thoughts. And they want power and they want loyalty. And if you're a Black person who doesn't give them loyalty, then they don't care that you're Black. They do care in the sense that it extra hurts them, hurts their feelings. It enrages them. They'll be upset and maybe you'll be attacked. And they'll say things. You're voting against your own interests. It's like the trees voting for the axe. I saw in my comments, or ants voting for raid, or chickens voting for KFC, things like that. But they don't know what I consider to be my best interests and the things that were important to me, because they didn't care enough about me to ask. They just see Black, they see woman, and they're offended. And that's it. So when people see pictures like this, and I assume the new Trump intern photo will be more diverse than probably this bottom photo here, because again, they'll have a probably more diverse pool to work with this time around. But when people see this and they get upset and they're like, oh, how come there's not more brown faces? Screw you, you don't care anyway, and you would demonize the people if there were more brown faces in the crowd. you would demonize them because that's what you do. I've been to the White House for Black Central, I mean, sorry, not Central, Black centric events, and people aren't like, oh, it's just nice that there's Black people there. We're getting around. That's not the sentiment. It's the sentiment in some places. It's a sentiment in some places. You know, like my sister had a event. She went to this campaign school in Yale some years ago. And so she asked me to join her for an event for dinner with some of the alumni from the program. And so we were the only Republicans in the room. And they're always looking for more Republicans to join, you know, the program and stuff. And so they're upset, grieving, I guess you could say. Well, we were happy about the results of the election because this was like maybe 2 days afterwards. But there were some people in the room who were like, I'm glad. I just want Black people to participate. I want Black people to vote. I want bodies to the polls and for them to make a decision. And I don't tell people who to vote for when I do my job of getting people to the polls. And I like the fact that there are Black people in the room, that there are Black people in proximity to Trump who can talk to him and let him know about some of our issues and things that are important to us. And my sister actually told a story about there's a lot of conversations about Black pilots and other stuff like that. And someone had mentioned to Trump that there was a lot of Black pilots who were being forced to retire. So there's a shortage of Black pilots. Now, DEI might be like, okay, let's or so people have it in mind, I guess, we just got to get Black pilots, and people are concerned that would mean that there's pilots who aren't properly trained enough, or they're looking over other pilots who are more competent for the job to get someone who's Black in or whatever. That's the kind of narrative that's been going around for a while. But Donald Trump was like, okay, well, what can we do to make sure that there's not this disparity here? And so people started brainstorming, and they started saying, well, we can fund more money into programs that are going to look into getting more Black pilots or whatever, that have like a focus in that. So he he's not against diversity. He's not against inclusion. But the issue with equity, as Ben Shapiro talked about it on Jubilee, when he said that Kamala Harris's DEI issues are dangerous for the country, the issue is when people just look at a disparity and they assume it's because of racism, and then they try to craft policy around, oh, we're trying to solve this injustice that's fueled by racism, instead of looking at why there's an actual disparity and seeing if it's cultural or education in the community or whatever, to see what actually has created this disparity. Because if you don't actually know, how can you properly solve the problem? How can you properly make a policy that's going to rectify the situation? Because equity, as Kamala Harris will define it, is that maybe we don't all start off in the same they want to make sure that everybody ends up in the same place. And everybody doesn't start off in the same place, but they want to level the playing field so we can all end up in the same place. But we're not always going to end up in the same place, because people have different priorities. They have different goals. They have different work ethics. They have different, even if people have the same education level, some people, float their way through school. Some people, are naturally more talented. Some people have to try harder. Some people waste it all away because they're lazy. So there's just a lot of things that you can't just assume. You just can't assume. You have to actually look individually at people, because at the end of the day, they're going to make their own decisions. There's different things that I know how to do, that other siblings could have learned how to do, but they didn't want to, because they didn't want to be made to do them, like for the church or whatever. So there's a lot of things that I know how to do that I taught my youngest sister how to do, because she wanted to learn. And some of those things I do, I've turned around and I make money off of it. And those same things, my younger sister has turned around and learned how to make money for herself off of those things. So there's even people in the same household will not always come to the same conclusion, the same end goals, because people are different. They're different. So the problem with the diversity, equity, inclusion is really the E. It's the ideology in between that tries to rectify what they see as injustices by just creating more injustice, because people aren't going to end up in the same place. You're not going to get that same end result that you want unless you rig the system somewhere, somehow. So that could mean that, okay, well, you want a certain amount of quota of black faces here. Okay, but maybe you don't have enough of black people applying who are actually qualified for the position. And there's just a pool of white candidates that are stronger. But you're going to overlook them because you want to meet your quota. So you're going to be unfair to people who deserve it, and actually unfair to people who don't deserve it, to get the end result. So that's really the issue. That's really the issue. And they do all this for virtue. Again, not because they particularly care about black folks, because at the end of the day, if you're a black person with the wrong ideas, then they try to destroy you. They try to bring you down. They try to demean you. They want you to be unblack. Okay. You're a traitor. Something's wrong with you. Okay. It's for virtue. It's to look like they care. It's to make themselves feel good. But as soon as they get the opportunity, to really show themselves, they do. Like Charlemagne was on The View, and I think he said this stuff on his own program, but he's talking about Hunter Biden and the pardon. And he's like, the issue with this is Democrats are always talking about, like, oh, we're high and mighty, oh, we're the ones with the moral high ground. And then at the end of the day, they do this Hunter pardon thing, and they just surrender their high ground. And when it comes to Trump, his thing is like, hey, everybody, I might be thinking about a bunch of different narratives, combining them. I don't know if Charlemagne said all this stuff, but the thing about Trump is that he's like, everybody's corrupt. Everybody does what they want to do for their own self kind of interest. And the Republicans, they'll do shady stuff, but it's the Democrats who pretend like they don't do shady stuff, but they really do shady stuff at the end of the day. Now, I think people obviously have a skewed perception on Trump and the Republicans and the Democrats, because the Democrats have always been shady people who like to virtue signal. But it's like, we are the good ones. We're the moral ones. We're this and that. When the truth is that Biden has always been corrupt. They've been doing shady stuff for a long time, and this isn't the first time. Like, Republicans are not surprised that he did what he did, and if there's any Democrats surprised that he did what he did, then they just don't know politics. They don't know the people who they're voting for, who they're even commentating about. So they've always been about the virtue signal. What makes them feel good? What makes them look good? But that doesn't mean that at the end of the day, what they actually do to service those people are actually good. What they're doing is actually good, you know? I think in some regard, there's some truth to Trump. He I guess specifically when I think about, like, the tax code, he'll say, like, oh, I can fix the tax code because I've used all the bells and the whistles that they allow in the law to benefit myself. So yeah, I can fix it because, and by the way, Hillary Clinton, because this is the conversations in 2016 election, like, her and her friends, they take advantage of these same laws, and they're the ones who write them. So then I use what they use. So, she just pulled the curtain back so everybody could see how they make the sausage, I guess. But I think in both parties can suck or whatever, but I how they see Republicans, like, sometimes they'll say, like, oh, the Republicans, they'll just they're tough guys, they'll just do whatever and they won't care. I'm like, that is not Republicans. Like, I can maybe think of a few things where they were just like, we're going to be bold and do whatever, and we don't care. And most of the time I'm pointing my finger at Mitch McConnell. That's just not usually how Republicans are. They cave on so much. They cave on so much all the time. All the time. But anyway, I've talked so long about this particular topic. Um, so we'll leave it at that, I believe. Again, I I assume the bottom photo this time around with the Trump administration will be more diverse. But in 2017, it was hard to be a Trump supporter. Now it's a little more rebel. It's a little bit cool, you know, and it's a little bit more like I don't care what you say. And the harder that they fight and push, the more people are going to be pro him anyway, and that's how it was with his indictments. And I before I wasn't like, oh, let me make all the stuff debunking what they're saying, because I just didn't have a lot of energy because I was upset with him about a lot of different policy stuff. But the more they push and the more they attack me, it's like, you know what? I'm about to let me roll out this MAGA hat. Cause y'all really getting on my nerves. So that's how they create more MAGA, because people have it in their minds that it all goes back to that meme. It's not really they're not after him, they're after, well, it's Donald Trump, and he's sitting down and he's pointing, he's like, they're not really after me, they're after you, I'm just in the way. So I know that to be true. So people just end up wanting to fight for their shield, their meat shield, a little bit more. Anyway, let's move on. Because it is already 5 o'clock. I did start late though. But I've been going for about 50 minutes myself. So I did see the full interview with Donald Trump and Kristen Welker. And some people's commentary about it was a little strange to me. Like some people on TikTok, I saw some clips and they're like, she's just so hateful, you can see it in her eyes. And I don't, maybe she does, maybe she doesn't, but I don't think it's, I don't know how people talk. It's not like the when Trump was talking to the National Black Reporters, I forget what the order of the acronym or whatever, but I hope that you guys know what I was talking about. But you could tell that was a hostile environment when he went there, and he was already upset when he went out on stage. And some of the questions were hostile. You could feel that. I didn't really feel that way with Kristen here. And at one point in time, Donald Trump, he's like, you have so much potential, but you're so biased. And she pushed back and she just said certain things that weren't exactly I would say truthful, or that left out some important context to certain things. Like I have this example right here. Like they were talking about birthright citizenship, and she quoted the 14th Amendment, but she left out a pretty important part.
You promised to end birthright citizenship on day one. Is that still your plan?
Yeah, absolutely.
The 14th Amendment, though, says that, quote, all persons born in the United States are citizens. Can you get around the 14th Amendment with an executive action?
We're going to have to get a change.
Okay, so it doesn't say what she said. I mean, there's some words in there, but she left some out. And so it's like all persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens of the United States. So I don't know what the Supreme Court will come down on, because I'm sure if he did this with executive order, it would be in the court so fast. With the jurisdiction thereof, people make the claim that if you're here illegally, you are not properly here under subject and jurisdiction of the United States and our laws and other stuff like that. Now, other people have pushed back and said, if you're in the United States, you are subject to the jurisdiction of the United States. So that doesn't make any sense. I don't know what people will fall back on, but the argument that the Trump folks are going to make, and his lawyers and the Republicans are going to be for ending birthright citizenship, she left out a pretty important part of the 14th Amendment. So that's interesting. Interesting. Now, I think I mentioned this yesterday. I talked about it yesterday a little bit. I think that birthright citizenship should end. I don't want him to do something necessarily with an executive order. If he was doing it really fast for just the meantime, that's one thing. But I don't know if people feel like they do it with an executive order, maybe that removes a little fuel from the fire from people to permanently make some kind of change. I think that they should, if Congress can clarify what that section with the subject to the jurisdiction of or whatever that applies to people becoming the United States citizen, if they have that sort of authority where they could make that clarification, then I think that they should pass something in Congress about that. And even if that won't work and they actually need to add something to the Constitution, I think that's worth doing. I think Donald Trump, he obviously wants to do stuff for the border and fix the border and have that be his legacy. And he was obviously going to do a better job at that than Kamala Harris, who called the wall a vanity project, a medieval vanity project, and at one point said there wasn't a crisis. Now that was back when she was running for president, in 2020, rather than this past election where it seemed they tried to ignore it a little bit, and then all of a sudden they're running ads that show pictures of his wall in it as if she's some kind of border hawk because she knew that was an important issue. But obviously people shouldn't trust her, and they didn't trust her with this particular topic and subject. I think that it's worth them campaigning on ending birthright citizenship, because it doesn't make sense to have pregnant women, who might be crossing with their kids already and their husbands, but trying to get over to the United States so they can make sure that the child in their womb can be born and will become a citizen. And that child who's a citizen will be able to, pave the way for them permanently staying in the United States. Or someone who's a foreign national ordering some kind of child to be crafted and created through surrogacy. And then the mother in the United States has the child, and all of a sudden that child has, citizenship because they were born here in the United States. I think they have to make some kind of change. They have to make some kind of change in order to deter people from continuously risking their lives and coming over here so dangerously and stuff, and taking advantage of America's generosity. And with the historical context of the 14th Amendment and what it was actually supposed to apply to, maybe they can make a good case in court for it not applying to every person who, again, crosses the Rio Grande or whatever, trying to give birth here. Maybe they can make a case, maybe they can't make a case or whatever, but if they have to actually change the Constitution, I think it's worth campaigning, because Americans are on his side as far as fixing immigration. And I think a lot of Democrats are going to look stupid if they oppose some of the things that Trump is gunning for. So go make the case to the American people. But if you just do stuff via executive order, people are going to be able to vote someone else in next time who's going to be able to use the power of the pen to undo what Trump has done. So I want to make sure the impact that Trump has, because he only has 4 years, I want to make sure that they do things that will dramatically change America for the better. It will not just be basically a speed bump in the road for, I don't know, Josh Shapiro or Gretchen Whitmer or whoever might be, down their list of who's maybe going to be in the White House in the future. So, people mention that segment. There was a section when they talked about the minimum wage where, I don't know, it was very kind of strange to me, because I'm like, why bother asking about that? Like, is it just a lib thing that's on your mind? Like, I know that's important to a lot of people, but you're a reporter, like, asking the questions about minimum wage just seems silly to me. Well, we'll just play it and I'll commentate.
There are 20 states that still have the federal minimum wage at $7.25, and I actually have a map. 19 of these states actually voted for you, sir.
Mm-hmm.
And you can see it right here. I don't know if you remember this, but during the debate in 2020, states actually voted.
So look at that, $7.25 an hour. Okay. How many people do you know that works for $7.25 an hour? People can choose in their states to have a higher minimum wage than that. And you know what? The market can determine that it needs to be way higher than that. Way higher than that. So, like, during the pandemic or whatever, or coming off of it, you saw so many signs like McDonald's, like hiring up to $18 an hour and all kinds of different stuff. We're way past $7.25 in some areas. So this talking point that we got to raise the federal minimum wage because it's still at $7.25. How many people don't care about that's not a reality because it's not feasible for a lot of people to live off of that kind of money. And so you can't attract people to work for you when you're paying that low. Now maybe you can do it for, I don't know, family members or something where there's like different rules or something, but a lot of people won't work for that. And because they won't work for that, people won't hire for that kind of money. So to raise the federal minimum wage to what? And Trump handled this question very well. He did, so.
For you, sir.
Mm-hmm.
And you can see it right here. I don't know if you remember this, but during the debate in 2020, I asked you if you would raise the minimum wage. You said you would consider it. And so my question for you is, now that you are going back to the White House for these 19 states that voted for you,
trying to guilt him into it.
It's a very low number. I will agree. It's a very low number. Let me give you the downside, though. Yeah. In California, they raised it up to a very high number. And your restaurants are going out of business all over the place. The population is shrinking. It's had a very negative impact. But there is a level at which you could do it. Absolutely. Yeah.
What is that level?
I don't know. I mean, I really don't know. I can say this. You have a lot of businesses that are open and thriving because of the lower minimum wage. If you raise it too much, and you understand this, if California went crazy, they went crazy. And the restaurants are closing all over. Many more people are hurt.
So I hear you saying, similarly to sort of what you said in 2020, will you consider, is this something you're going to look at?
I'd want to speak to the governors. And the other thing that's very complicated about minimum wages is places are so different. Mississippi and Alabama and great places are very different than New York or California. I mean, in terms of the cost of living and other things. So it would be nice to have just a minimum wage for the whole country, but it wouldn't work because you have places where it's very inexpensive to live, where a minimum wage, which is $8 or $9, might have very little effect because the cost of living in certain places is really low.
Can you guys imagine Kamala Harris answering that question? No, and Trump, he speaks very simply. He doesn't, he's not the most eloquent person in the world, but I can't even imagine Kamala answering that question like coherently and to the point. And of course, she would have a different perspective than he would anyway. But to me, did that seem a little weird to you guys? Like, here's the paper. It's $7.25. These are the red states that voted for you where it is. What are you going to do for your supporters living at $7.25? And that doesn't mean people are actually working for that number. And places are differently. Places are different. If you set up a federal minimum wage, I don't know, to appease a lot of people in California or whatever, in New York, you might be screwing people in Alabama who are business owners who can't pay whatever the new minimum wage is because they can't afford that. The cost of living in Alabama and other places are different than in California. We're a collection of states. We have, things that bind us all together, obviously, but we all live differently. We all think differently. Our economies are different. So he answered that great, but to me, it was a little strange. It was a little strange to me. It was also strange to me. Well, it's a valid question, but And someone edited this section right here because it's got a picture of Ray in the front. But I think how Trump answered the question about the FBI director was pretty like, duh.
Are you going to fire the current FBI director, Christopher Wray, who you appointed?
Well, I can't say I'm thrilled with him. He invaded my home. I'm suing the country over it. He invaded Mar-a-Lago. I'm very unhappy with the things he's done. And crime is at an all-time high. Migrants are pouring into the country that are from prisons and from mental institutions, as we've discussed. I can't say I'm thrilled. I don't want to be Joe Biden and give you an answer and then do the exact opposite.
We're going to talk about
so
that,
I'm not going to do that. What I'm going to say is I certainly cannot be happy with him. You take a look at what's happened. And then when I was shot in the ear, he said, "Oh, maybe it was shrapnel." Where's the shrapnel coming from? Is it coming from heaven? I don't think so. So we need somebody to straighten. I have a lot of respect for the FBI, but the FBI's respect has gone way down over the last number of years.
Don't you have to fire him in order to make room for Kash Patel if he is in fact confirmed?
Well, I mean, it would sort of seem pretty obvious that if Kash gets in, he's going to be taking somebody's place, right? And somebody is the man that you're talking about.
So, to answer Anna's your question, I can see your comments. I can't always read all of them while I'm like trying to keep my thoughts together. I don't know if there's a particular thing you wanted me to address. But yeah, I can see your comments. I thought I thought Trump's answer to the FBI thing was so good because like, are you going to fire the FBI director? They invaded my house. I've got a little reason to be upset about it. And but even more than the documents case, which I thought, and I said that was the most legitimate out of the ones that they were going after him for. They got that thrown out because of, they said they really didn't have the jurisdiction or whatever to the authority, not the jurisdiction, but the authority to come after him the way that they did. And there was some behavior that wasn't great, I think, in how they are moving the documents around and stuff. That was alleged in the indictment. Of course, they'd have to prove it, but they invaded his home. They invaded Mar-a-Lago. But even beyond that, there's other issues with Christopher Wray. But the fact that after Trump was shot, someone tried to murder him in front of the world, and Trump was bleeding. We saw him bleeding and stuff. And the left tried to downplay it. And I think they did downplay it quite a bit because they didn't talk about it like, I mean, this was a huge event that happened. And there were people who were upset they didn't die, which was pretty wild. But, it kind of went away. It wasn't talked about the way that you think would be talked about in the media and stuff. And people tried to start downplaying it with like, oh, well, he wasn't actually shot. It was just shrapnel. It was glass from the teleprompter or something like that. And Christopher Wray kind of added fuel to that conspiracy fire with the whole shrapnel thing. And if I was Trump, I'd be annoyed by that. And so these people do serve at the pleasure of the president. They do have 10-year terms that are the max that people can serve. That doesn't mean they have to serve the 10 years, and Trump can ask him to step aside and step down. And I think that's most likely what's going to happen, obviously. So why ask that question? He obviously has someone else in mind. So they just that was an interesting part of the interview to me, because Trump's answer was just so real. Like, they invaded my house, man. So like, what else is he gonna do? What else was he gonna do? It was just funny to me. I'm trying to see. She did ask about abortion, which that was a short conversation. He said that he would probably do, as far as the abortion pill, what he's been saying, but he's not going to guarantee anything because facts change. So they could very well limit access to the abortion pill, which they should. I mean, I think they should make it so that people can't use it at all. It should be banned or whatever. But access to the pill, yeah, they can shift the access to that, and that would save a lot of lives. She did ask about IVF, and gosh, what's her name? Something Britt, Kate Britt, or maybe Congresswoman. After the Alabama Supreme Court hearing, she called Trump, and I guess they spoke a little bit, and she's the one who convinced him to push the IVF stuff. And so Kristen had asked about them funding it, and so he basically has other priorities that are going to take priority first. And Kristen mentioned that there's going to be Republicans who aren't going to support him, aren't going to support the taxpayers or the insurance companies having to pay for that, because that would just be radically expensive. And he's just kind of like, we'll see. So that obviously looks like it's not going to be a high priority for him. Maybe not even in the first 2 terms. We'll see. The priorities are going to be the border. It's going to be deportations, securing the border, the tax cuts. Now, he said extensions for the tax cuts, Trump tax cuts. I want to see them do something permanent. So people don't have to be like at the edge of their seats with like, are the taxes going to go up? Like, I would like to see something permanent, but I think whether they can do something permanent is going to I don't know, rely on whether or not you can get some crossover votes as well. I think I played for you guys yesterday when she asked about whether or not, but the country being divided. And Trump was just like, I'm not the one who's president. And that's true. But to me, it was strange because when she brought up, because I saw clips of her bringing up, will you, admit now for unity? It's like the country is very divided right now. So will you admit that you lost the 2020 election? Do you think that's why the country is so divided right now? Because he won't admit that he lost the 2020 election. People have baked that. It's baked into the cake. People are aware of what he said. At the end of the day, they wanted him over Kamala Harris. Now, there's a lot of left-wing people who are maybe still upset about that or whatever, and the things that he said. But at the end of the day, what's it going to matter if he said, oh yeah, I tricked my supporters, I tricked everybody, I lied through my teeth, haha, I'm president now. Do you think that would even solve the problem? I saw someone say that he's going to be in a casket and the journalists are still going to come up to his corpse and ask, will he concede that he lost the 2020 election? It was such a bizarre question, especially because they had kind of dabbled in it prior to getting to that point. And he's like, well, I know we disagree on it or whatever, but it is what it is. And she just like, will you unify the country right now and admit that you were lying the whole entire time and that you actually knew that you lost the 2020 election? Why would that bring unity? Like, it was just such a strange kind of, I don't know, provocation, like an unnecessary provocation. And I understand she's a journalist and she, is saying something that she, in her opinion, or, is true. But there's so many things going on. Again, the Americans have baked it into the cake. And that's not why I believe that we have all the division that we have. And Donald Trump started explaining, like, I'm not even, you talking about the country's divided? You're right, but I'm not the president. Joe Biden is the president. And one thing that was very divisive was all the weaponization of the Justice Department. And that's true. That's true. And he started talking about how he was attacked. And by the way, I think that Donald Trump, it would have, he talks about Jan 6 people being the government being weaponized against them. But he also could have talked more on the campaign trail or in general about how they went after parents, like the DOJ investigating parents, and the wanting to use the Patriot Act on parents, or how pro-lifers are in prison and stuff. So they can see that as a whole, there's particular groups of people with, you know, particular political ideologies who have been attacked. So they can see more of the weaponization, and it's not just solely about him. So I'm not saying he didn't talk about those things a bit, but he could have, you know, spread that out more, especially in this interview with Kristen Welker. But yeah, the country is divided, but people want to be divided about Trump, you know, and a lot of people really don't want him to succeed. And I get that. Actually, I understand they're upset. I think you want the country to succeed. I'd want the country to succeed, you know, whoever is running it. I think if you think that there's things that he's going to implement that is going to make the country worse off, then I would assume you'd want those things to not be implemented, and you want him to change his mind, correct course in a more positive position. But overall, we should want the country to do well. You know, the Bible has a scripture like, pray for those who are in authority so you could live a quiet and peaceable life. That's what we should aspire to, you know, praying for our leaders, whether you voted for them or not. So at the end of the day, they do hold the authority. So I just thought it was interesting when they she brought up the 2020 election. It was so bizarre. So bizarre. She said that she thought she was fair. I'll play this clip from Trump though.
And the reason is because I'm able to go on a show, even like yours, even though you're very hostile, I'm able to go on a show like yours. No, you are.
Well, hopefully you thought it was a fair interview. We covered a lot of policy ground.
It's fair only in that you allowed me to say what I say, but you know, the questions are, you know, pretty nasty. But look, because I've seen you interview other people like Biden, and
I've never interviewed President Biden.
When I say you, I'm talking metaphorically. I've seen George Stephanopoulos interview Biden, and he's a tough interviewer. It's the softest interview. I've seen CNN interview him. They give these soft, you know, what's your favorite ice cream? It's a whole different deal. I don't understand why. You know, you would think the press would like to see strong borders, great education, a powerful military, so we have a country left, and all these different things. And somehow they don't want to see that. And the reason is because
I think nasty was a bit excessive on his part after watching the whole entire thing. And you know, Welker is, when I was seeing him that he said that, or other people were talking about she hates him so much, that didn't seem to be I think she carries herself better than the way that some people were portraying her particular interview with him here. But I did think some of the questions were a little weird. like what's the point of asking that? But I think, as she said, they covered a lot of policy ground, and you just didn't see, I think, conversations like that he had with her for over an hour with someone like Kamala Harris on the campaign trail. You didn't see it. Like, even that question, like the minimum wage, and it's not like Trump was like Thomas Sowell or something when he was explaining it, but it's just common sense. Like, places are different. If you raise it too high, businesses can't pay. The market will deal with certain things, you know? Or there was a part where they talked about tariffs, and he started explaining about different companies and their needs, and how, you know, he's able to help other groups, and he just was breaking things down and explaining economics to her or whatever. And I'm not saying that everything he said, like the facts were 100% of all the details and all the numbers were correct or whatever, but I'm sure the fact checkers will love to be on their toes now, unlike what they really were with the Biden administration. But, you know, I thought this was a good interview overall, and that he was, on his game. There were some times when she said, "Will you promise? Will you make a promise to the American people?" And he's like, "Will you guarantee?" And he's like, "I can't guarantee anything." He's like, "I can't guarantee there'll be a tomorrow." And so many people in the comments on the video were like, I love that he said that. Like, here's some freaking honesty. And he kept saying things like, I don't want to be like Joe Biden and say I'm going to do this, do this, do this, do this, do this, and then not do it. And then just lie to folks. Now that he made promises during the campaign or whatever, but now it just seems like if you read Art of the Deal or just hear him talk about deals or whatever, anyway, you promise, and you kind of have a starting negotiating point, and you kind of go from there. And so there's things that he obviously wants to shoot for, and promises or whatever that he made, that obligations that he's going to see where he can do the best that he can. But you can't do everything. I don't think he's gonna be able to pull off the IVF thing, and frankly I don't really want him to, because I think there's a financially it's really not feasible. And but beyond the economics of it, I think there's some ethical issues that I don't have time to get into today. But I look forward to seeing what happens with the administration. And even though I've had some concerns, and still do have concerns with some people that he's picked for the cabinet and whatever, it's funny because people are like, "Oh, look at his cabinet, look at his cabinet," and I'm like, the people that you probably think are controversial, that you think I should be freaking out over, are probably ones that I'm like, I'm okay with it for the most part. And there's folks that I don't like, who they would probably like on the left. So we just have different priorities. And it's just so funny. People saying, "Oh, you're not going to be laughing. You're going to be crying real soon. Oh, they'll find out. They'll be so upset." And I'm like, no, I may voice criticism, but I will not regret my vote. And I see Anna was said justice for Beverly. Is it Beverly or Beverlyn? That's a pro-life woman who you want to talk about family separation. She's separated from her family because she's in federal prison for violating like the FACE Act and stuff, for protesting, abortion clinics and so on. So when people say, "Don't, you're separating families," we separate families all the time when they break the law in the United States of America. So I know people who were separated from their families after January 6th, and they weren't violent, but they were separated from their families. So miss me with that. See with that. Anyway, thank you guys for joining me today. I got to get going. Please go to blacktnews.com, check out different content on my website, articles, videos, etc. If you like what I do, please consider leaving a donation at blacktnews.com/donate, because it does cost a stream, run my website, all the good stuff. So you guys can support. I very much do appreciate it. You guys can check out different merch. It's available at blacktnews.com, like the cool goat shirt or the goat hoodie. Goat stands for greatest of all time. And so I've got Washington, Lincoln, Reagan, and Trump on there. And I got I voted for Trump, and all I got was historic peace deals, gas under $2, no new wars, trade deals, and other stuff. But it ends with this lousy t-shirt. I got other stuff. Like the "I'm not the victim you're looking for" t-shirt. I got some Black History stuff. Black History Month will be here before you know it, February and stuff. So I got some cool stuff. I'm gonna have to make another shirt that has some more Harriet Tubman stuff on there, because I'm like, people invoking her. I'm like, guys, she was a Republican. She was a Republican. Anyway, I'll see you guys tomorrow. Enjoy the rest of your night. God bless.